UCF Live. It is homecoming week, and Tulane is stumbling into the bounce house with a 1-7 record. We preview Saturday's game. It is a jam-packed show. Let's welcome in one half of the Sons of UCF. Adam, you are with us on time tonight.
I always am, Trace. My favorite part of the Open is you never know which one I'm running. And so I like to see your face as you see which character pops up on the screen. The Night of Lorien typically brings you the biggest smile, just so you know.
I'm a big fan of the Night of Lorien. Also a big fan of the Homecoming Ducks Spirit Splash Friday. This is my duck from last year. I was not in the pond. It was a gift to me, but people will be diving in to the pond on Friday high noon for their chance at the 2021 Duck. Happy homecoming, by the way. Are you coming to the game on Saturday?
I will be at the game. I will not be at Splish Splash, as George O'Leary used to call it, but I will be at the game.
Let's get to some breaking news. The boat has sailed into Green Bay. Green Bay Packers inking Blake Bortles after Aaron Rodgers goes on the COVID protocols list. I guess practice squad initially. He, of course, won't get the start on Sunday. That'll be Mr. Love. Did I lose you, Adam? I perhaps did. Anthony Montalvo, the Burlsworth Trophy nominee, most outstanding player to begin as a walk-on. He is nominated on that list. Have never heard of that particular award. Have you?
I have not, but look, Monty got a lot of grief earlier in the year when he was playing out of position. And I think he's settled in nicely that he's gone back inside. I think he's actually been a pretty solid player for us. Definitely got a lot of grief, but he's one of those kids that you root for no matter what. So don't know much about the Burlsworth Trophy, but I hope we win.
And updating the bowl projections, Action Network has UCF Hawaii in the Hawaii Bowl against Utah State, CBS Sports Boston College in the Military Bowl, ESPN either Virginia Tech in the Military Bowl, or how about this matchup against Tennessee in the Birmingham Bowl? That would just be too much fun, wouldn't it?
It's interesting. Utah State, let's not forget, Anthony Tucker is the offensive coordinator there, former running backs coach. And Hayden Kingston, friend of the Sons UCF show, he is a grad assistant there, so a tie in there. The Tennessee thing would be interesting. It would really be interesting. I wonder how that would turn out. Obviously, we know what offense you'd get. We know where our defense has struggled. That would be an interesting one. I think that would get some eyeballs. I think if you're going to have a, quote unquote, disappointing season to wrap up with a Tennessee, I think that would put a bow on this thing for everybody.
Of course, UCF beating Temple 49-7 Saturday, moved them to 5-3, one game shy of bowl eligibility. Lot to like in this one. For me, got to be Mikey Keene, 5 touchdowns. Dylan who?
Well, if you read the dungeon message boards, I mean, that could be sooner than later. You know what I like, Trace? Honestly, the witness protection program has released our tight ends, and we saw Alec Collar out there with a really nice game, 2 touchdowns, a Tyreek Hill-esque move on the sidelines to get another first down. He played a nice role in the game. We know that the tight end had been somewhat missing for a few weeks there. Glad to have that back. I think it's a huge benefit to a young quarterback like Mikey Keene.
Well, you can see Coach Malzahn showing more confidence in Mikey Keene and the offense. Now, is this an anomaly? This is not a good Temple team, but you said on the show that you were looking for Mikey to have a breakout game. Certainly when you're throwing 5 touchdowns and you're in some UCF history there in doing so, that is a bit of a breakout for him.
It's a good confidence game. I said on the show, it's a get right game, right? Where everything kind of goes your way. Guys get snaps, get reps, get some good feelings about how they played, and maybe that carries over to later in the season. So it's a good get right game. I understand that you could see pretty early on that Temple just didn't have the fight in them. But look, we've seen teams that we thought on paper UCF was better than. If you need any proof, see the Navy game. And we saw how much we struggled. I really liked how we were clearly going to be the better team on the field, and we continued to show that. We didn't let up. We didn't make mistakes. We didn't do dumb things, dumb penalties, things like that. I like that we knew we were the better team, and we went out and improved on the field. It's been a while since we've done that, so I definitely thought that was a nice sign that we dominated in the fashion that I think expected we would.
What I particularly liked is we didn't put the foot off the pedal, right? That was a complaint during the Josh Heupel era, that it would get so conservative, they'd stop running their offense. Gus said, let's keep going out there and keep doing what we do. And I think that's nothing but confidence for the Knights. You mentioned the Navy game. If they play Navy now, different outcome, maybe a little more experience for Mikey Keene, a couple more guys back from injury.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been positing this theory on all the various shows I've been on, and the defense in particular. And this is not meant to be a knock, but since Eric Gilliard has departed the program, I think it's allowed folks to play in their more natural positions. Bryson Armstrong is not in that Knight hybrid role; he's in the linebacker spot. We've seen Justin Hodges come on. I think the defense actually has kind of settled into their natural roles. We've seen some guys really step up. Not a knock on Eric Gilliard of any stretch, but I think the defense is kind of rounding in, and they've got people in the right spots now. So I would love another crack at Navy. Obviously, we blew that opportunity. We don't deserve that chance, I think, at this point. But I think the defense is rounded in nicely since that change on the I guess the personnel groupings.
Coach Malzahn asked at his media availability about the offense and it opening up a bit.
Thing for me is we had some explosive plays. We threw the football down the field. We didn't hit them all, but you got to take chances to loosen things up. And I think when you do that, it opens everything else up. So I really think we're starting to go in the right direction offensively. We just got to continue to have those explosive plays and put points on the board.
We'll preview Tulane coming up in a bit, but they give up some 40 points a game. So opportunity again this week to continue to push on the offense.
I'm confused because this week Gus says we have to throw the ball down the field, open it up a little bit. But the previous couple of weeks, we didn't really see that. So I assume he saw something in the Temple tape that allowed him to know that he'd have those opportunities. But we saw a very conservative ECU game plan. We saw a pretty equally conservative Memphis game plan. So I don't know when we decided we had to open things up and stretch things down the field. I liked it, don't get me wrong, but I think it makes you wonder, did he just see in Mikey or just say to himself, I've got to let this kid go, whether it's good or bad? Or did he just recognize Temple was that vulnerable from that standpoint? But I'd love to hear the comments. Just wonder where that was at for ECU. Wonder where that was at for Memphis.
Yeah, but you're talking about early starts for Mikey Keene, right? A true freshman. He's going to continue to make mistakes. How much better would he have been if he had Isaiah Bowser back earlier, right? Or some of the other guys. How much better will he be if we get Flashback at wide receiver this week? So I still think you got to trust Coach Malzahn here that he knows what his team can and perhaps cannot do at this point. He has said that not many teams improve over the second half of the season, but this is a team that could, if only because they're going to get injured guys back.
Yeah, I think, look, you hit the nail on the head. I think having Bowser in the backfield is a really good security blanket for a young quarterback to be able to turn around, hand the ball to a big bruising guy like Bowser who may get stopped for 1 yard loss and turn it into a 3 yard gain. Those little hidden yardages, I think, really add up throughout the game. And that keeps Mikey from a 2nd and 8 and puts him at a 2nd and 6, right? Keep him from a 1st and, from a 3rd and 4 to a 3rd and 2. I think that hidden yardage that Bowser eats up just by being a bigger back, just by kind of putting his shoulder down and getting a few extra yards, we probably don't recognize how much those hidden yards have really helped out a young quarterback like Mikey Keene.
Yeah, Knight's now 5-3. I asked the big question on my Twitter at SignPez this week. Now, what do you think UCF's final record would be? A lot more confidence amongst the fan base. 41% saying 9-3. Most, though, 54% saying 8-4. Perhaps that game at SMU coming up the week after Tulane and homecoming, maybe that's a difficult road game. Then you've got UConn and Green UConn to finish things out. So 8-9, but of course you got to get the win this week. Look who's back. Let us welcome back in former UCF quarterback Nick Patty, who joins us. Nick, let us begin with Mikey Keene, 15 of 29, 229 yards, 5 touchdowns. The Mikey Keene era, it has now exploded.
Yeah, it was a great performance. I think all around, I think you've seen it a couple times with multiple people saying it was the most complete win, most complete game I think we've had. I think there was a lot of good things throughout the game. We're very consistent, and we could have, I think, created a lull for ourselves with some things that happened, and they didn't allow that to happen. So I think they pushed through some adversity. I think it was a good win. I was pretty encouraged by it.
In fairness, though, this is not a very good Temple team, and now the Knights face a struggling Tulane team. But there's growth from Mikey. You've got some guys coming back from injury. UCF's running the ball pretty well. It is a recipe for a big win.
I think it's good, right? It's like you said, struggling Temple. It'll be a dull, Tulane game, but it'll be homecoming, so there'll be some juice in the stadium at least. I think I think it's good for the team now, right now, right? There's a couple losses that you wish you could have back. There's a couple things that you think could be different about this season, right? So it's almost good to have a couple games. We can get some confidence going. We can find our identity a little bit on offense with Mikey being in there. It's, whenever you have a backup quarterback for a long stand, it's different when it's just finishing a game or it's mop-up duty or whatever. But when it's, hey, it's your deal for the foreseeable future, you don't really have a chance to re-identify yourself as an offense. You just sort of have to play and let that happen. So I think what's good about these, the Temple game and coming Tulane game is that we'll be able to get a little bit of a rhythm. They'll be able to. Temple was good to see some of the stuff that Mikey does really well and some other people do really well. I like the play calling. I think was pretty dynamic, consistently dynamic, which was good. And I think it'll only get better as they get comfortable with personnel.
One thing I like, Nick, is out of the witness protection program came the tight end grouping. Alec Collar, 6 catches, 2 touchdowns, a great sideline acrobat move to get a first down. As a young quarterback, how important is it to have a trusty tight end that you know that you can throw the ball to when things kind of break down or when you need to, pick up a couple of quick yards?
I think it's big, and I think it's one of those things we've wanted to get them in the mix. We've talked about getting them in the mix a couple times this year, but most of the time, the tight ends, role in the passing game isn't the first look. So it's understandable why we haven't been getting to him much, because it is a safety valve, a lot like a running back with a check down, so it's not always the sexiest routes. We have some pretty athletic guys at tight end, and we have in the past. That's why we've seen the tight ends work so much, because we've had guys that could really make it happen. But I think he'll get more and more comfortable, especially after a week like last week, and you'll see more and more of them. Gus uses that type of player a lot. He did at Auburn, and I think I've said it before, that little scat type player where they get really creative with, but not a quick guy. It's always a fullback or a tight end, and I think you'll start to see him show up more in the passing game, especially in the red zone where they do some wheel routes and some misdirection type stuff. So I think it'll be big. I think it is more of a safety valve than younger quarterbacks think. You just don't think about it. You're looking for check downs, or in this, today's offense, you're looking for swing routes or, backs in the flat. But I think it'll be big. I was jacked up, and you can see we've got some athletic dudes that can make it happen.
Well, speaking of athletes, Ryan O'Keefe is a guy that UCF is obviously trying to find ways to get the football. Describe what you see in terms of the different ways that UCF is trying to get Ryan O'Keefe involved, and what do you think about the different ways that Gus has done that so far? So it's clearly they're trying to get the ball in his hands.
Yeah, which is great, right? I think he's sort of that one guy that is a difference maker with speed, and they've got a ton of athletes. But I think one of the things that Gus is doing is using the entire field to spread a lot of guys out. You see a lot of jet sweep motions. You see a lot of jet sweep type of plays to where you're spreading guys that are very athletic around. So you can't, as a defense, hone in and sort of play 1/4 of the field, 1/3 of the field. You can't just play the front. So I think a good way to keep Ryan involved is to not just use him as that guy, and that's what they've done. They've used multiple people in that role, which I think kind of makes you forget about him, even though he's such a good player, because you can't just as a defense hone in on that when you've got guys all over the field, which is a little bit of a testament to being able to do that with a lot of athletes, which they've got that ability right now. But man, Ryan's a pretty dynamic player, and I think when they can start to stretch the field with him vertically, that'll be really dynamic because he's a threat.
Let's switch to the other side of the ball. Knights are getting pressure on the quarterback. They are creating turnovers. Defense just 30 seconds away from a shutout in this one. Temple with a garbage time touchdown, but that's back-to-back weeks now with 7 points given up after the debacle in Cincinnati. Are they starting to adjust to T. Will's system and growing into their own here?
I think so. So much of the success on defense and scheme, trust me, is most of it. But a lot of what goes into it is confidence. And the defenses that we've had that have been really good in the past, they just have that kind of swag. They have a confidence. They fly around. There's a lot of excitement. And that puts pressure on an offense. When you see the guys up front, when they're able to jaw a little bit, when you see the guys in the defensive backfield running around and flying around with speed. That is intimidating on an offense. And I think we've been a little tentative throughout this year because they're just not comfortable with the scheme full blast to be able to be full speed, right? Whenever you're thinking as a player, just naturally slows you down. And so I think they're getting comfortable. I think no matter what it is, a couple good weeks as a defense is really good for any defense because it gives you that confidence. You can play with a little more swag. And especially for the guys up front, just because so much of being in the trenches is just kind of shutting your mind off, letting your athleticism fly, shine through. And when they're thinking up there, which I think the entire defense has been doing all year, it kind of hinders that a little bit. So I think it's good. I'm fired up that they've had some success because they'll feed off that.
Let me ask you Robert's question on screen. How do you rate the role played by Joey Gatewood? We talk about him every week. We see him in different moments of the game. What do you think of his usage here against Temple?
Yeah, I think it's one of those conversations, and I was thinking about this during the game because the announcers were talking about it a little bit. And, sort of been in this role as a player. He's not your long-term answer, right? You've got a staff who likes him, who's familiar with him, and he's obviously a talent. This has nothing to do with his ability. But I just think it's one of those things, because he's not the long-term option, they're just not going to pour into him tremendously with a lot. I think they're using him in a role that is just enough where they feel like they can utilize his talent. But, I don't know. It's such an interesting situation because they're obviously pouring into Mikey. They're going to let him rip it, and they should. I think that's where, again, not anything to do with his talent because he's a talented kid, but I just feel like they should let it rip with Mikey. If they have something creative they feel like Joey can play a role in, whether that be on offense, special teams, tight end, whatever, let that rock and roll. But from the quarterback position, I just feel like it's late in the year with a season where, who knows what our record could be, but it really doesn't matter, quote unquote. Hate to say that, but it's such an interesting conversation.
Nick, news broke 2 weeks ago that Quadri Jones making the move from quarterback to wide receiver. If only we had somebody we could ask about that. Oh, that's right. You would be well positioned to tell us, what is that transition like? What's the I guess the challenge facing Quadri as he makes that move?
There's a couple challenges. I love the move. I think he's an extremely athletic dude who brings he doesn't bring a lot of playing experience to the position, but he brings a lot of experience from another position's perspective, right? Receivers and quarterbacks watch film, break down teams, defense is completely different. It is so connected, but so different in the way you prepare. So I think some of the challenges, to answer your question, are, it's a much more physical position, which you understand as a quarterback, but you don't have to do it because receiver also comes with special teams and things of that nature. And there's not a lot of quarterbacks that have to jam a gunner on punt, and there's not a lot of quarterbacks that have to hook block a nickel DB that's, pretty athletic dude and they're big and strong, or blocking a linebacker in the run game. So, I think the physicality of the position is the biggest challenge in the transition. But I love the move because it brings another dynamic to the offense to where Mikey, Dylan, whoever's back there, will have a guy out there that sees the field the way they see the field. And I think that's such an advantage for an offense because you've got two guys that see it like a quarterback. You get two guys that diagnose the entire field. You got two guys that can now report back to the coach that are quarterback-minded people. So I do think it's a major advantage to an offense, and I think he's an athlete that we haven't been utilizing, that we are going to be able to find creative ways to mix into the offense. Not to mention the creativity you can produce with a quarterback that has the ability to throw and all that jazz. So I think it's good, but there's some challenges.
All right, it's homecoming week. Did you ever get a chance to partake in Spirit Splash? Were you ever in the reflecting pond?
Never got in the pond. We were there. My senior year, I think, is the only year that I went, that the entire team went. I never got in the pond though. We never ventured that far. I know better than to do that, especially before game day. But cool experience, man. What a cool tradition.
A lot of elbows flying in that pond for those little rubber ducks.
too many for a rubber duck. There's a lot of things that I would jump in a pond for, not a rubber duck.
Not a rubber duck. Nick, thank you so much for joining us on this week's Sons of UCF live show. Go Knights on Saturday, homecoming versus Tulane.
Absolutely. Happy homecoming. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, Nick. A tradition, again, this holiday season is that the Mom Squad, the Knights players' moms, are going to be collecting unwrapped toys. They're going to be doing that Saturday noon to 1:30, game at 4. The team arrives at 2. So many people go out there to greet the team when they get off the buses. And so they're going to be collecting from 12 to 1:30. The handicap parking lot right over by the football practice fields is where you'll find the moms and all of the toys. And if you aren't going to be at the game, you can look on Amazon at Operation Christmas Night, of course, that with a K. They're going to be collecting toys to give to children across Central Florida this holiday season. Another good cause, another great opportunity for the UCF moms to come together for this year.
Yeah, that's a really cool trade. I mean, they've been doing this for a bunch of years, and even after, guys leave and graduate, the tradition continues on. It's awesome that they keep doing this. I think it's a really cool thing. So shout out to all the Knight moms who are participating. I think it's a really cool thing that they do, and it's great to see that tradition carry on year over year.
Now, 2 Saturdays ago, I had opportunity to see Sam Jackson, the offensive lineman out at Lake Eola in downtown Orlando, walking in the Alzheimer's walk in memory of his grandfather. And several of his teammates came out for that. One of those is the long snapper for the Knights, Tyler Paul. And we were talking about a new initiative that he's doing. And I said, hey, why don't you hop on the show with us one Thursday to talk about this? And so we welcome in Tyler. He is
surprise.
There he is, the collegiate ambassador for Big Man, Big Heart. And we also have UCF Mike. It's a twofer here. We get Tyler in and we get Mike. So Tyler, you're the collegiate ambassador for Big Man, Big Heart. Explain to folks what that is and talk about how you're going to utilize this to promote what you're calling Brit's Bunch for an upcoming UCF home football game.
So Big Man, Big Heart is a way for athletes to use their NIL in a positive way. You see a lot of kids going out there making merchandise. And for us, it's not about the money. It's more of just giving back to the community. Like here in Orlando, we have an outstanding community who's always supporting us left and right. So this was my way of giving back. And my buddy from high school, Dylan Gibbons, he's the founder of Big Man, Big Heart. And he called me one day and basically said, hey, I'd love for you to be an ambassador for UCF, Orlando. And didn't hesitate, took it. So I just started my first fundraiser with it for, it's called Big Day for Brit's Bunch. And right now the plan, we have about 5 special needs young adults attending the UConn game. So we're raising money for that, and it's been an outstanding thing to witness from my end, seeing just everyone come together and just help me support this cause.
Yeah, Tyler, I was going to ask, what kind of support have you gotten from your teammates? UCF's the tradition, Anthony Roberson, Jordan Johnson, they've been very, philanthropic through their time at UCF. What kind of support have you gotten from your teammates since you launched the Big Man, Big Heart campaign?
So from the teammates, I've had a lot of retweets and reposting help me just get out there and share, because one person retweets it, 10 other people that I don't know could see it and help support it. There's been a handful of kids that have actually donated to the fundraiser, which has been outstanding. I love to see that from them.
I know you said you're going to send these kids to the game, but something else comes along with it, right? They get field passes. They get to meet some of these guys. What else goes along with that day?
So we're working on field passes. I don't know yet, but we're taking them to Burger U before the game, and then to the bookstore to get the autographed footballs for them to come to the locker room after the game and get all the players to sign it for them, just as a little souvenir gift for them, and hopefully it'll bring a big smile to them.
And of course, you've dubbed this Brit's Bunch one of our favorites, a friend of the program, the show, the UCF football athletics program, Britt Garcia. Talk a little bit about how your relationship with her has developed and how she inspires you to do something like this.
Well, I met Britt my freshman year here. There's about 6 or so of us that went to her church during, I want to say, Christmas time for just like a little holiday, like get together. They had food, and it was just an opportunity for us to like show our faces, put a big smile on the kids' faces. But I met Britt at that day, and since that first hug she gave me, it was just like there was just an unspoken connection of like we were best friends. And at the same night, I met Jan, her mother. And ever since then, she's always talked about, I wish there was a way that I could bring these kids to a game. And that's always stuck in the back of my head. And throughout the years, always seeing Britt at different events that UCF holds, or definitely after the games, she's always there giving all the players hugs. But after I officially partnered up with Big Man, Big Heart, and I had to have a fundraiser, I knew that was going to be my first project, because literally since day one, it's stuck in my head that, that would be awesome for these kids to come witness a game. And so Britt's been in charge of inviting as many friends as she's wanted to come, and I'm just here to help support it and basically just run the show for them.
All right, Tyler, you're way too nice of a guy. So I have to ask you some hard-hitting questions now. I got 5 rapid-fire questions about your teammates. Are you ready for these 5 rapid fires?
I think so, yes.
All right. Who is the funniest teammate?
There's a lot of characters on the team. I'd have to say it's a tie between Brett Bell and Devon Wilson. They're both just, you never know what you're going to get from them, but it's always just something funny's coming out of them.
Which teammate smells the worst?
I don't know. We all smell pretty bad after practice. There's not one guy.
All right, fine. Who's the nicest? Who's just the flat out just nicest person besides yourself, obviously, on the team?
I'd say first one that comes to mind is actually my roommate as well, Daniel Labarski. He's always got a very good heart, very good character with him. So he's definitely one that stands out a lot. But once again, there's a bunch of guys on the team that are just like that.
Who's got the best non-football talent on the team? Maybe a singer, a dancer, a piano player. Who's got the most non-football talent on the team?
I know John Powell and Trillian Coles, they both play the piano.
Okay.
That's the only thing that comes to mind.
All right, the most important one. Which of your teammates does the best Gus Malzahn impression?
Nate Brady was kind of infamous for Halloween. He dressed up as Gus for Halloween, and he got into character for it. So I'll give it to him.
Complete with a visor and everything.
Mm-hmm. Visor. He sprayed the hair spray paint his hair gray. He had glasses. He had the polo and the khaki pants.
Was there a Waffle House menu?
No, there wasn't. I don't think there was. No.
Seems like a big miss.
I gotta imagine it's pretty easy for you guys. The football teams are all pretty much rock stars these days. When you're out at the club or you're out at the bar and you're out trying to pick up some women, you tell them you're a football player, but do you tell them you're a long snapper, or do you tell them you play a different position?
When it comes up, I do say I'm a long snapper, but most of the time the reaction is, "What is that?" And then I just have to basically say, "All right, 4th down, I'm the person who snaps it to the punter. And then for field goal and PAT, I'm the person who snaps it to the guy in the knee holding the ball for the kicker." And if that doesn't work, then sometimes show a video if they're that interested in trying to figure out what it is, but most of the time it's just you give up.
Just tell them linebacker next time.
Yeah. An upside down quarterback.
How did you get into being a long snapper?
So in my high school, I went to a very small high school. There's only about 30 kids or so. And actually, that's where I met Dylan Gibbons, the founder of Big Man Big Heart. He was a junior my freshman year. I originally played offensive line at my small stature. And my junior year, we needed a long snapper. And I raised my hand, said I could do it, went out to the field, could not do it. Eventually got it down, found a coach, he fine-tuned me. And afterwards I was like, okay, O-line's definitely not working out for college. Let's run with this long snapping gig, and it's paid off so far.
Well, let us wrap up with this, Tyler. You're about halfway to your goal. You've set a $10,000 fundraising goal on GoFundMe. How can folks find you on social media, and how can they contribute if they're interested here in Brits Bunch and your fundraiser?
So both on Twitter and Instagram, if you search my name, Tyler Paul, it'll come up, and I have the link for the GoFundMe in my bio. For those who aren't on social media, if you search bigmanbigheart.com, you can donate on that website.
Tyler, good luck Saturday against Tulane. Thank you for what you're doing for Brits Bunch and all of those kids that are all those young adults that are going to get to go to the game coming up against UConn. And thanks for stopping by the Sons of UCF Live.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Tyler.
Tyler Paul, Brits Bunch, good activity there. It's so great to see these guys off the field and all of the various community service they do. So we thank UCF for helping us set up having Tyler on tonight. Today out at UCF Media Day, I was able to break free over lunch to talk to the Knights players, men's and women's team. Coach Abe out there, Coach Dawkins. You know, for the men, they are going to open up on Wednesday against Robert Morris. They're returning a lot of their team. All their super seniors are back. And I channeled my inner UCF Mike, who's been, getting on Coach Dawkins. This has got to be a team that's going to go to the March Madness. And I asked him, is this an NCAA caliber team, Coach?
I think we are. I think we are. I think we have the potential to be an NCAA team. We have to go out there every night and prove that and earn it. But I do. Like I said, I think our teams, I'm a big believer in all of our teams and their ability to make the NCAA tournament. And it's no different with this team. That's our standard. What is our standard? Championship level standards means you're a tournament team, every year. And that's what we're going to push for.
Mike, the Knights are returning 97% of their points scored, 96% of their minutes played. A little bit of a pressure situation for Coach Dawkins and the players. I think they're expected to do a lot this season, right?
Yeah, high expectations for this group. The best returning group we have since that last time we were in the tournament with Taco and BJ Taylor and those guys. So I'm expecting these guys to compete for the conference championship. And yeah, I'm expecting them to get to the big dance. I mean, I don't think it's that big of an ask. You said all the guys we have returning. Now let's see them take this next step. These guys got to build up. CJ Walker last year looks like a hell of an athlete. He's on the rebounds. He can take that next step. We got the shooters. We got everybody. We got the pieces to do it. Now let's go do it.
Yeah, I will say, Johnny seems to have been snake bitten in his time at UCF between injuries, COVID stuff. I feel like he hasn't really had, outside of that the year Mike's referencing where we got to the second round, a full squad. And even then that was a tough season. I think that we had some guys missing for a while. So can this team stay healthy? Can we keep everybody together? If so, to Mike's point, the nucleus is there to make a run in the tournament. I think I said this in a few shows a few weeks ago. There's a brutal stretch midway through the season that UCF has to climb through. If they can come out through that on the right side, they can keep everybody healthy. All the pieces are there, and this will be an interesting, I don't want to say referendum on Johnny, but he's got a lot of young players. How did they develop from year 1 to year 2 or year 2 to year 3? That development piece will be huge for a guy like Adams, a guy like Walker. Where does Mahan and Perry as super seniors fit in? We saw Jamil Reynolds play really well in stretches. How does the big man come into play for us? So if Johnny can keep this team healthy, I'm really curious to see what he can put together, because to be fair to him, he hasn't really had the ability to have some of those things happen throughout his UCF career so far.
You mentioned Jamil. I had an opportunity to speak with him one-on-one. CJ Isaiah over the next couple of days on the Sons of UCF YouTube page and all sites for the Sons. Those interviews will be released to get you ready for the season. Coach Abe out there as well. Women returning their entire starting lineup intact. They open Tuesday against Duquesne. They are projected second, men fifth. So some high expectations, but for the women a little bit more. Friends over in Tampa are projected first. And Coach Abe has scheduled a very competitive non-conference schedule, which includes a home game against Tennessee coming up.
Why did I do that? No, as it's coming up next week. Obviously our conference and our conference coaches got together and, we talked about let's really get our RPI, our net higher for our conference. And we talked about that. But the reason we scheduled a lot of these different games was, number one, we couldn't get anybody to play us. That was the first thing. But number two, we wanted to get ready for our conference, because if we prepare ourselves at the beginning, then when we go into our conference, I feel like we're going to be way more prepared.
Going to be competitive season for the Knights. Both teams, men's and women's, play good defense. Can they get enough offensive production? Have some interviews, one-on-one diamond battles. Brittany Smith will be releasing those as well. Women open Tuesday, men open Wednesday of next week. You guys probably talk about it a little bit more on your show, and of course we'll have some sound and reaction from the opening games. So basketball season here, just around the corner, guys. Going around the kingdom, volleyball continues on its roll. They swept Tulsa and Wichita State. McKenna Melville, lights out, AAC Offensive Player of the Week. Seems like she wins it just about every week. They're up to 21st in the RPI. They hit the road. They're at Cincinnati at ECU. 11-1 in the AAC, no conference tournament this year, so Knights looking to close this out, and a 21st RPI with those early season non-conference games that they scheduled and won really bodes well for them now. Men's soccer, I don't know what's going on there. You play senior day against SMU, they get shut out 5-0. They drop to 60th in the RPI. They go on the road to Tulsa. They're really stumbling at the end of the season after having a good stretch there. And women's soccer, NCAA tournament selection show coming up on Monday. Women stumble badly. They lose to Memphis in the first round of the AAC tournament. 8-7-1 now. Overall, they're on the bubble, 56 RPI. This is a team with Caroline Delisle, the AAC goalkeeper of the year, but not enough offense from that team. Disappointing way to play in league, especially when you consider that they did so well out of conference with wins over Texas, Ole Miss, Penn State. I'm not saying there's a hot seat for Coach Tiffany Roberts-Sahedek, contract extended, but a disappointing stretch here to end the season.
Wow, I was firing coaches, Trace. Obviously,
I wasn't fired. I'm just saying.
It sounded like you.
I just think there's more expected here. When you beat teams that you scheduled tough non-conference, you don't want to stumble in games in the AAC.
Yeah, I mean, we saw this a little bit last year, especially with the men's team. They started off slow and kind of picked up towards the end. And it's obviously all about the second season, as Gus Malzahn would say. This is an actual second season with a postseason. So obviously the women's team has to sweat it out to see if they can get in. The men's team, that SMU game, I saw parts of that. That was tough. That was really tough to watch. I know SMU is traditionally a powerhouse team and a really good program, but 5-0, that was hard.
What's the equivalent of 5-0 in football? 75-0? How's that?
35-0?
That's it?
It's probably higher than that. Yeah, it's higher than that. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty bad.
Let's turn our attention back to football. Homecoming Saturday. Tulane 0-4 in the league, 1-7 overall. UCF 13.5 point favorites. Knights coming into this one on a roll, back-to-back wins over Memphis and Temple. This has been a very disappointing season for Tulane. Really a ripe opportunity for UCF to become bowl eligible at homecoming on Saturday.
Yeah, obviously we all saw Tulane play Oklahoma tough in that first game of the season. I think even Mike and I were on the show saying, man, maybe Tulane's put it together. Michael Pratt looked really good. And then the wheels have fallen off since. I know there's some injuries to play with. I will say this in their defense. They have played, if I count them, 5 teams that were ranked at some point in time during the season. Oklahoma, Ole Miss, Houston, SMU, and Cincinnati. So they have had a really tough schedule, but obviously it has not gone the way that I think Willie Fritz and that group wanted them to. So we'll see what kind of fight they have as they come to the bounce house on Saturday. But certainly a tough season so far, and you would hope UCF can do what they did against Temple, take a team that perhaps they're better than, and put their foot on the gas and come out with a nice win.
It's a home game, homecoming. We played our best football at home, even though we just played our best game of the year on the road this past week. But the team is getting better each week. I feel very confident coming into this game. Tulane has given up 40 points in 5 of their games, 40 points or more, and they haven't broken 30 points, I don't think, going back to week 2. So a team we should be able to take advantage of and keep padding our stats, getting ready for another big game the following week.
Knights nearly 2 touchdown favorites. Heavy chance of rain in the forecast, perhaps 50% chance across Saturday. Fans being asked to wear white. Perhaps that means white ponchos. I don't know, Mike, if you saw late this afternoon, Knights released their white out home uniforms with that State of UCF logo. I remember so well from my collegiate years at UCF. One of my favorite logos that'll adorn the helmet.
Yeah, you go back further than us. When we were there, was the other, like what the Sons of UCF logo looks like, with the spear going through it. But the joust, right? But I like this logo. It looks cool. I'm down with it for a week.
Adam, what about you? You like it?
I do actually like it. I think it looks nice on the white helmet. We've only seen it previously on the black helmet. Obviously, we know there's a worldwide helmet shortage, so clearly we're going with the white helmets throughout the season. So, we'll see if that could ever gets corrected. But I think it's a nice look. I like the helmet. I think it's sharp.
Gotcha. Well, I know we may be trying to get on board our next guest, Gary Smith, Tulane beat reporter for the Times-Picayune New Orleans Advocate. Do we have Gary, Adam, or is he a little bit frozen over there in Louisiana?
I don't think we do. Yeah, I'm not able to add him to the stream just yet. So we'll keep efforting that. Talk amongst yourselves.
Talk amongst yourselves. Well, what Gary posted on his Twitter today is the Tulane quarterback Michael Pratt, who did not play last week, might be playing, not cleared yet, but could be playing Saturday. Of course, that means UCF has had to prepare for him. And as was mentioned, they've had a very tough schedule, top 20 schedule, but they have not looked good. They give up a lot of points, Mike, 40.9 per game.
Yeah, they gave up 61 to Ole Miss. They gave up 52, I believe, to East Carolina. So a defense we can put up points against. Michael Pratt is a good quarterback. We saw some flashes from him the last year. We're playing against him. He can throw it. But we play better against traditional throwing quarterbacks. I don't fear him that much on the ground. So I think maybe a decent matchup for us.
Yeah, I think he's a local kid too, Mike. I think he's from South Florida. So he played well the last trip to UCF. I remember actually being, I don't want to say surprised, but not knowing who he was. I think he played pretty well. Obviously, a whole new defensive game plan at that point in time. You mentioned it, Trace. Obviously, UCF back-to-back games, only giving up 7 points. Obviously, the last one at home to Memphis. They seem to play better defensively at home. So you would hope that they can bring some of that energy if the crowd can get into it. Plus, it's on natural grass. And as we talked about, we don't lose on natural grass, Trace.
And we won't talk about the surface at SMU a week later. Let's just get the W.
Worry about that. SMU's got their own problems. Houston's still returning a kickoff for a touchdown. They're fine.
Yeah. Let us hop into the mailbag, and hopefully we can get Gary's technical situation situated. At PDP Gauge, over under 2.5 touchdowns for Mikey Keene. He says, I'm hoping for the over. I'd say over.
I'll go over. Yeah, I think maybe Gus finally got some of that trust in Mikey. I think maybe he's found a couple of new offensive plays, some new weapons, and obviously Tulane's defense has given up some points. So I'll take the over. I think 3 is a pretty safe number.
I'm going under on this one. You mentioned the weather. It's going to be a slop fest. This is going to be a Bowser game. Bowser's going to run 3 in. We don't need Mikey to throw 3.
This is going to be a Bowser game. At 2 letters, 2 words, that's Robert. Were the passes to the tight end an anomaly against Temple or an emerging trend? I know what you guys are hoping for, emerging trend.
Yeah, look, I think it just gives you, I don't want to make it seem like we're Mike and I are like pro tight end like all the time over here. I think it gives you another wrinkle in the offense that the defense has to prepare for. So hopefully Tulane's watching the Temple tape and saying, okay, we can't leave the tight end wide open. We can't fall for these ball fakes. We can't fall for the eye candy of Ryan O'Keefe or Amari Johnson on the sweeps. if it gives you something else it has to defend, it opens up the offense. So if we throw 1 pass, 100 passes, or 0 passes, as long as the threat is there, I think it's what you need for your offense.
Yeah, we're going to start seeing tight ends involved more. I think we're going to see multiple tight ends, maybe some 12 formation, 2 tight ends, and see maybe Hescock gets involved.
Akrahalis W, a little less worried about next year's O-line after seeing them play last week, but still concerned about losing so many starters. Thoughts? Yeah, we don't know, though, that we won't necessarily have some of those guys back, right? They could make the decision to play, right? Isn't that right?
We win in the trenches, Debbie. That's where football games are won and lost. Obviously, having experience on the line this year has been a big help. And so we'll see who comes back, who doesn't. But you win in the trenches. And if we can be solid in the O-line, if that's old guys, new guys, maybe Tyler Paul comes back to the O-line, who knows? But that's a position group that you have to have a really good performance, or else your entire offense is going to sputter.
Do we have an update on Matt Lee's status for this week? We saw he had to leave the game after the first half last week. That's a big position for us.
Yeah, that seems like it perhaps was more precautionary. Coach Malzahn likes to say at his Monday media availability that he'll have that information on Thursday, but then doesn't have a media availability on Thursday. So just a big mystery going into the game. But of course, we do have Matt Lee coming back next season. So
if you saw our time, I think they mentioned something about a shoulder injury for Matt Lee. That was what they were referring to. Don't know when it happened. Don't know what it was, but they seem to be referencing a shoulder.
I had not seen our time. At Brian W. Peterson. Oh, do we have Gary? We might have Gary.
We're going to give this a shot, everybody. Let's all learn together here. Let's see. We got a square there. Gary, can you hear us?
Yes, I was having computer issues. My computer doesn't seem to be working very well.
As long as we can hear you, Gary, the Tulane beat reporter for the Times-Picayune, New Orleans Advocate, we thank you for hopping on the Sons of UCF Live. You reporting this afternoon on your Twitter at GUER Smith. Michael Pratt, perhaps we see him on Saturday, the quarterback for Tulane.
I think that's the case. It's up to the team. It's up to the medical staff at Tulane. The coaches don't get a say in this because of he was in concussion protocol. But he practiced on Monday without his helmet on, just throwing. And then they had to take the NCAA mandated Tuesday off. But Wednesday and today, he practiced full. But it's up. They're going to find out tomorrow whether he gets clearance to play. But my guess is he'll play. He got the number 1 reps during the week in practice, so I have a feeling they feel like he's most likely going to be available.
And what do you think it means if he plays? What does that do for Tulane's offense?
It gives Tulane a fighting chance because their running back is back now. Tyjae Spears, is often the best player on the field in a lot of games he plays. He suffered a torn ACL in the 3rd game last year against Southern Miss, and he was probably going to have a 1,200, 1,300 yard year, and it's taken him about a year to really recover from that injury. He had a 38-yard touchdown running against Houston, a big game against SMU, and then he exploded against Cincinnati. He had 106 yards on 16 carries. Cincinnati hadn't given up more than 80 yards all year to a running back, and he also had a 17-yard reception where it was 3rd and 19. The quarterback threw it to him behind the line of scrimmage and said, "Hey, you make a play," and he broke 5 tackles and came up 2 yards short of the first down. They've got the running game now that they were lacking earlier in the year, but they need a passing game. True freshman Kai Horton started in Michael Pratt's absence last week and barely threw for 80 yards. He's just not ready to play yet. Michael Pratt hadn't had a great year, but he's a gamer. He can make plays, and they have no chance if he's not the starting quarterback in that game. None.
Switching to the defense for a second, one of our listeners, he goes at @Sublime_Night on Twitter, wants to know, the defense seemed pretty stout against Cincy and OU, but then against ECU, Ole Miss, and SMU definitely seemed to be in the opposite direction. What gives? What do you think they did so well against those two teams, and where has the defense fallen short so far this year?
Yeah, the defense has just been a crushing disappointment this year. You mentioned they didn't do so well in those 3 games. Tulane gave up 102 points in the first half in those 3 games. It gave up. That's an astounding stat. 40 points to Ole Miss, 31 points to East Carolina, 31 points to SMU. Going to the Cincinnati game, the defense was ranked, I think, 5th worst in the country in yards allowed, 3rd worst in points allowed. This was a defense that Tulane thought was going to be really good this year. They did lose their bookend stars from last year, who are both playing in the NFL now, in Cam Sample and Patrick Johnson, but they returned all their linebackers. They returned about 8 defensive starters. They just haven't played well. It's that simple. The OU game played pretty well, but that was when Spencer Rattler was the Oklahoma quarterback. What's Spencer Rattler doing now? That says something there. And Tulane legitimately played well against Cincinnati. That was the team that we thought we would see on defense. They've had any problem you can have on defense. They've had busted coverages, guys trying to do too much, missed tackles, a lot of stuff that's really not characteristic of a Willie Fritz coach team they've had for most of the year. And it's kind of been mystifying that they've been this bad. And we'll find out whether they can take some of the positives that they had against Cincinnati, where they didn't miss any tackles, where they didn't bust any coverages.
Well, if it's any consolation, it seems like that Cincinnati game kept them out of the playoff hunt. So maybe that's something you guys can hang your hat on there.
Yeah. That was Tulane. Yeah, it's funny. Tulane actually played pretty well against Houston too. Tulane led against Houston in the third quarter, had the ball, was driving for another score, and they tried a waggle rollout with Michael Pratt, and the Houston defender was supposed to go inside. He ran straight up the field, hit him. He fumbled. Houston went and scored a touchdown and then ended up pulling away. So at home, Tulane has showed a pulse in their last two home games. They were beating Cincinnati. They were at one point, they were only down 2 at halftime. They were beating Houston in the third quarter. The road has been the real struggle for this team since that Oklahoma game. They gave up over 300 yards on the ground and passing to East Carolina. And SMU was just a no contest from the start. They couldn't stop anything SMU was doing.
Well, technically, that Oklahoma game was a home game, right? They put your logo on the field and everything.
That's the other factor with Tulane. They have had a lot of distractions this year. That Oklahoma game was supposed to be a home game. They'd never put a team ranked higher than 17th in the history of their on-campus stadium, Yeoman Stadium, in its 8 years. And they were really looking forward to that. They had to go on the road. They played well, but I think that took a lot of energy out of them. And then they were stuck in Birmingham for another 3 weeks after that. And I think that did the Hurricane Ida distraction certainly hurt their focus a little bit, but it still doesn't explain everything about this year has been uncharacteristic of a Willie Fritz football team. Just the fundamentals just haven't been there for whatever reason on defense.
So Willie Fritz seemed to have the team moving in the right direction the last couple of years. This year so far, only 1 win. Is he taking any heat over there? Is there any worry about, is he on a hot seat at all for this season?
He's not on a hot seat yet, because he went to back bowl games the last 3 years. That had never been done at Tulane before, and the schedule was tough this year. Let me give you a stat. Tulane beat Vanderbilt at Vanderbilt in 1984 when Vanderbilt was ranked early in the year when they were 4-0. Tulane did not beat another top 25 team until they beat Army last year, when Army was 25th. That's 35 years without a
lot of years.
Yeah, it's a lot of years. Tulane's 5 ranked teams out of the 7 losses this year. So these are not teams that Tulane was beating in the past either. The problem has been more the margin in some of these games. And I think the Ole Miss game ripped a lot of the confidence out of this team, because they actually thought that they had a chance to win that game going into Ole Miss. They played Oklahoma tough. They thought they had their best team in Willie Fritz's tenure. And they went to Ole Miss, and Ole Miss scored, I believe, 9 touchdowns in 11 possessions, and it just kind of ripped. They haven't been the same team since then. They thought they were better than they turned out to be, and they seem to lose a lot of confidence in that game that they've had a hard time getting back.
Let's wrap up with this. What has to happen for Tulane to spring the upset on UCF's homecoming Saturday?
They just need to stay close for a half. They haven't been able to do that in any of their last 3 road games. Just they've down 21-0 before the end of the first quarter in almost all of those games. If they can do what they did against Cincinnati, they have a chance, because Tyjae Spears is a special running back. He is going to be playing in the NFL down the road if he can stay healthy. Michael Pratt can make plays at quarterback when he's healthy, but they in all their games, they get so far behind early, they have to basically have had to abandon the running game, and most of them, and their offensive line is not equipped to protect a quarterback when there's not the threat of the run. So if they can hang with UCF for 2 quarters, they have a shot, as they proved against Oklahoma in the opener. But yeah, that was a long time ago now, wasn't it?
Gotcha. All right, Gary Smith, we appreciate you hopping on with us on the Sons of UCF Live. You can find his coverage of Tulane at GUER Smith. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, and sorry for the technical difficulties at the beginning.
No worries. It happens. All right, he laid out the recipe. He laid out the recipe for what Tulane could do. The talented running back. We've seen UCF struggle at times with the running game, but the defense playing well right now. I like that. Get out to an early lead, jump on them early.
Yeah, they have two talented backs. They have Cameron Carroll, who's actually the leading rusher, 416 yards on the season. So they got a couple of dynamic running backs. If Pratt's back, obviously that gives them a better threat in the passing game. So that's an important story to watch to see if he actually will appear on the field. Sounds like Gary's confident that'll happen. So we'll see what we get when he's on the field.
All right, let's jump back into the mailbag, finish out with some questions. At Brian W. Peterson, assuming Dylan returns this week, probably not, or against SMU, maybe, do you think Gus continues to swap in and out with Joey Gatewood, or is that only to support Mikey Keene? I think he's going to continue to figure out ways to utilize him.
I think so too. I mean, I feel like if Dylan's back, this is a short yard situation. Obviously, with Dylan's injury now, if you got a 4th and 1, a quarterback sneak situation, you probably don't want to put Dylan in harm's way. So that actually may make Gatewood more of a threat in that perspective. But I don't know if you'll see it in as much as the in between drives, if you will, switching that we've seen with Mikey and Joey.
Yeah, I mean, I want to see Dylan back. I don't think he's coming back this week, so this may be a question for the following week. But yeah, we're going to see a little bit of Gatewood each week for the rest of the year.
At the CMAS 14, if it's Houston versus Cincinnati in the AAC title game, does AAC Commissioner Mike Oresco attend? He was all offended by the college football playoff invitational rankings that came out. He was just all upset.
Isn't he required to it? Like, doesn't he have to hand out the trophy? I mean, if they're taking stand-ins, I'll go if they're taking stand-ins. I mean, I don't like these teams, but if they need somebody to represent, like, let's send Elo or somebody then if Oresco can't make it.
What about he can pull what the Colonial? Is it the Colonial that says these teams are not eligible to participate? Watch him pull one of those.
Boy, at the Zeebles UCF, 2 questions. He says there could be a decent amount of seniors leaving after the season. If you could convince one player to use their free 2020 year to return next year, who would it be and why? Kalia Davis. Can we have him back?
Yeah, that was gonna be my answer too, Trace. Obviously, the injury is the challenge there. I would also wouldn't mind an old lineman, Cole Schneider, Sam Jackson. I don't know exactly where they're at status wise, but I wouldn't mind a solid old lineman coming back too.
How about Big Cat coming back for another year if he's down for it?
Does he get to come back as a transfer? How does that work?
I don't know. He's got a free. Doesn't everybody get an extra year? I don't know. Does he have, or is this his extra year?
This may be. I don't know. That's a good question. Zeebles UCF with another question. Mike, you missed a lot of the early jokes on last week's show and from the joke book. And he asked, did your niece love the joke book? She loved the joke book. And Mike, I've got one for you. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Wouldn't you?
Wouldn't you like to know?
Wouldn't you like to know who's knocking on your door? Page 99 of the joke book. We had a great deal of fun with those questions. At Smaro, are we hearing anything about Dylan's recovery? Is there any chance he could play when we become bowl eligible? It's looking like he will return, but when it becomes an interesting question. Let's say he's not going to play this week and he's not ready for SMU. Do you want him playing against UConn? Do you want him playing against Green UConn? Do you want him to, do you want him to have that extra year of eligibility? How much time do you want to give him?
Yeah, I'm of the mind that if he can't play against SMU, I think at that point you shut it down for the season. Maybe you save him for a bowl game. If we have a spicy matchup like a Tennessee, then maybe you say, I think he'd actually probably want to play that one. Maybe you save him for that spicy bowl game matchup. But if he can't go for SMU, obviously I think UConn is UConn. Green UConn is Green UConn. So save him for a bowl game if we have one of those.
No, if he's ready to come back, you bring him back. Even if it's against UConn, let him get back in the groove and then come back against the Cows and light him up for 7 touchdowns, blow him out the way we're supposed to. And then in a bowl game against, like you said, maybe Tennessee, maybe Miami, we're going to need all our guns for those games. Bring him back. If he's ready to play, let him play. He's not going to take 2 more years of college. If he's coming back for 1 more year. So he's got the eligibility anyway.
Of all the many things you've ever said, Mike, on 5+ years, whatever it is, of shows you've done, I have never agreed with you more than UCF has to avenge that big blowout loss to Green UConn at some point, right? I mean, because we don't know how long that series may continue once UCF goes to the Big 12. There's got to be a big blowout in this somewhere.
That's right. I thought you were going to say the thing you most agreed with was my top 5 list of nuts, but Yes, this.
I was driving home from work when you went through that. Large nuts had me quite laughing.
That was Adam that said that.
That was my. I just wanted clarity, Trace. I wanted clarity on what he was. I think it went macadamia or something, and I was.
I was thrown by pistachio. Ugh. No.
Pistachios are solid. He went like walnut, and I was like, that's a rather large nut. And so, the conversation's a conversation.
Scott also asking how my cat encounters went in Colorado visiting my sister and family. They got a new cat. Not a fan of cats, but that cat stayed away. It was quiet and kept to himself. So
I feel like I don't know that. Is there a backstory? Are you anti-cat?
I am anti-cat. There's several stories, but we'll have to pick that up on another show. Not a fan.
Top 5 cat stories coming up in this episode.
Yeah, they're good.
Top 5 cats. Here we go.
I was attacked as a child by a cat, but that's there's a lot of PTSD about that. So, all right, a triple shot on this show. We had Gary join us from the Times-Picayune to preview Tulane. Tyler Paul, the long snapper, who could become a linebacker depending on which bar or tavern he's in, and of course Nick Patty. Plenty to talk about. We enjoyed it. Mike, thanks for joining us as you were able to tonight. Happy homecoming, guys, and Adam, hope to see you on Saturday out at the Bounce House.
Yes, sir. Let's keep that rain away. I don't want to have to wear a poncho. It'll mess up my hair.
Spirit Splash tomorrow.
I say the same. Yeah, definitely.
I say you guys jump in there.
Splish splash tomorrow, Mike. Are you? So Mike's tradition is to get in his bathtub for Spirit Splash. Is that happening again this year?
Yeah, we should do it. We should do a live show.
No, there's no weed. There's no weed in your bathtub. That's a solo deal, my friend. There's only so much the Sons of UCF duo is going to do together. That's all I can tell you.
Well, obviously not in the same bathtub. You're 6 hours away from me.
But when you were college room, never mind. It's too much information. Happy homecoming, everybody. I'm Trace Rolko. Go Knights!
Charge.